This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Skeet Ulrich about Parish. How are you today?
I'm great, man. Nice to be speaking to you as well. Where are you,
Um,
by the way?
I'm in New York. What about you?
I just left New York. I'm in LA. Got in last night. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I live in LA, but visiting New York right now, so I'll be back
Oh.
sometimes. Awesome. But let's talk about Parish. Can you tell me what drew you to this show originally?
I think it was just one of the coolest scripts I had read in a long time, the pilot episode. In every regard, the depth of the characters, the depth of his dilemma of Giancarlo, Gray Parish's dilemma. Um, And then it just sort of had this music to it that was kind of hard to stop thinking about. And the pieces they even chose to describe the tone, the jazz songs, everything was just so mesmerizing. And I had dabbled with the Cajun accent for Anton Fuqua in a film and felt very comfortable with it. And I had to make a tape to get the part and stuff. But so that was something I was eager to explore a little more of, that accent, and that such a sing song. I don't know, it has so much spirit to it. So I could just hear the rhythms, and yeah, once I start getting stuck thinking about something, I'm desperate to get to do it. So that was that.
Well, I think that's all definitely true, but I also remember watching the pilot and towards the end, it's sort of similar to Ozark, like this feeling of just dread. Like these people are trapped, like this is going to be really bad, one wrong move, and like they're worse than dead. How do you think
Yeah.
that sort of jives with the rest of what you're talking about, like the beauty and the rhythm of it?
I think it's exactly. I mean, I think that rhythm sets that up. So, I loved the idea of, I sort of felt like Gray carries all these bass tones, all these bass notes, the heaviness that he has to deliver consistently. And then we really needed a character that was very staccato to kind of move that, so he had time for those pauses and for that, something that moved it. And so what you get at the end is this quiet from all of that. And I think that's the dread you speak of. So, I mean, yeah, it's, there was stuff written at the head of the second episode that was, you know, very verbal, and especially from Colin. We didn't shoot that draft of the script, but it was really interesting to see how it evolved into what you wind up seeing, from a pouring out of different ideas and different notions of what it could be to just this stuck quality.
How
Yeah.
do you how do you feel about Colin as a character? He's not the best in some ways, right? As a person.
It's funny. I guess not, but I never really, that didn't cross my mind. I think, I wrote on the cover of my script pretty early on, after about, a dozen reads of it or whatever, that, you know, does Colin bring fun or does he bring trouble? And then I circled both. And I think it's that fun that's really kind of intriguing to me, and something that there was a spirit to him that I really enjoy. And it came out of this idea that he could walk into any parish, if you will, in New Orleans, and be high-fived and be accepted. And he just had this, kind of almost everyman quality about himself as well. Yeah, he certainly has a checkered past, and did a lot of time in Angola, the roughest prison in the US. And that was an interesting, part that really I started focusing a lot on, was the idea of how in prison you can communicate very emotionally to someone that's this close to your face, given the confines of especially Angola, how many people they pack in those cells, et cetera. And you can also have a conversation with someone 100 feet away that's very intimate. And what is physical space after you get out? What is that, and it was just something that sort of kept me engaged, but it was interesting to play with in the car scenes with Giancarlo, this sort of, and it's hard for a camera to necessarily feel it appropriately, but but those things, you just start riffing on, and so I was more intrigued by his spirit and his ability to look at the bright side of everything, and that comes from a certain naiveness, obviously, and a little bit of being shut away for so long and not understanding the street language anymore. But yeah, fun stuff to mess around with. So I didn't see him as that bad.
Well, I've interviewed Giancarlo before. I know that he plays all these, very intense characters, but he's so like sweet and lovely. What was your experience working with him?
Yeah, he is very sweet and lovely. He's such a force, and I had the pleasure of meeting him in like 1991. I went to NYU, and Mamet and Bill Macy were teaching my class, and Giancarlo was doing a play there that he actually won the Obie for, and he guest taught a couple classes. And we were a group of 16, and then I ran into him about 5 years ago. I was shooting a movie in Albuquerque, and we were both leaving at the same time, wound up, on the same flight, and just chatted for 3 hours. And we talked a lot about a lot, and he sent me some books, and then this, he's just incredible. I don't know where he gets that much energy from. I mean, I do know in his practice how he gets it, but like it's still shocking. Um, he's a beautiful soul, and he's become a dear friend, which is kind of the cherry on top.
What was the filming experience like, just in terms of having the set in New Orleans?
That lent a lot, I think it's such an incredible town, and it reminded me a lot of pre-Giuliani New York when I was at NYU, and this danger yet this vitality. And I think that sort of summed up the show in a way. So it was nice to like to get to live in that energy, and I had not gone away on location for that length of time for many, many years, having, stayed at home to raise my kids and only worked in LA. It was one of the first go away for months. And that, I've been salivating to get that time again to really just focus on work. You don't come home and have this and that and this and that. You go to your apartment or whatever it is and work. And so it was nice to, be set there and to get to live there and really kind of feel New Orleans and let it be a character itself, which it is.
I want to issue a spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't finished the season. What do we think about a season two? What's happening? What would you envision for Colin and beyond?
I think that's, it's hard to say. Certainly the dilemma that Gray's in, I think he would, certainly look to Colin to be his inside man. And to, I think the great thing about the relationship and about the potential for the relationship is, it's the only family Colin knows is Gray, and it's the only connection he has. And so he's willing to overlook everything and do anything to maintain that family. And so he's a reliable guy for Gray. And um, I think there's a lot of fun to be had. I think there's almost a Breaking Bad style relationship sitting there to, delve into. Um, and I'm curious to see, I hope we get the opportunity for sure.
What kind of responses have you seen from people or random people on the internet to this show? And it's anything surprised you?
I try and not delve into the internet too much, but yeah, I mean the general consensus of people really dig it. I think it's really there's a lot of positive response in person. I go to these conventions throughout the year, and people's responses there, they're really loving it, and are kind of really excited to see more. So I don't know. It seems to have an energy to it that's, despite all the different ways you can go as a viewer in front of a TV, people are seeming to gravitate towards it, which is very positive.
Well, on the note of conventions, I assume you have a big fan base that follows you from the Scream franchise. Do you think that if they come, they come looking, I mean, obviously, I think Giancarlo has his own fan base from his stuff, but if people come to Parish looking for the you they know from Scream, what are they in for?
I think it's in a way not as dissimilar as some roles that I've played to Billy Loomis. There's definitely a Machiavellian sort of, ruse there. And I think both characters have that, and it's kind of fun. He's kind of fun to watch Colin get in trouble, which is kind of Billy Loomis-ish, however you would say that.
How does it feel to have that, that role really follow you a lot through your career? Do you feel like that's shaped a lot of what you've done?
So I think I've been, very diverse in the choices I've made. I'm really drawn to period pieces a lot, and I haven't really done that many horror films, two maybe. So I don't think. Well, I guess you outside the Scream franchise, that's three films in itself. But yeah, I don't think so. I think it's, certainly for a fan base, it's definitely the one of the biggest draws in my career for sure. Jericho's quite big. But uh but yeah, it definitely is a defining character for sure. It's interesting to see it continue through generations, and for people my age to have handed it to their kids who are now handing it to their kids. God, I'm old. And it's interesting, really interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned Jericho because I'm somebody I think I could make a list of 100 TV shows that were canceled too soon that I'd bring back right away. But if I made a list of five, Jericho would be on that. And I think that's because I wish I had sent nuts to CBS. I didn't. I must admit, I really should have.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's, I was in high school, I was really getting into TV, and there's just something, especially about like we were getting into some, alternate governments and, the Republic of Texas and all that. Like, I was so excited to see what would have happened with more of that. And I feel like if we were 15 years later and streaming services were around the way they are,
Yeah.
Jericho would be, having jumped the shark in season 15 by now or something like that. But
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want
It was an
just tell me
extraordinary.
about what it was like to be part of that show, and what it's been like to have this weird fan base for something that really didn't last very long.
Yeah, I mean, it had a lot of viewers when it launched, and in the 12 million range, it was up there. And I just feel like CBS doesn't really do shows like that, and didn't really quite know what it was or what they had. And it doesn't have the predictability of your typical shows there. And the second season, after the fans revolted and got it brought back, and to my understanding at that time, it was the first show brought back from cancellation in 23 years at that time, and just didn't happen. And they cut our budget in half, they cut our shooting days, they were like, wrap it up in seven, and that was 3 seasons of content, those 7 episodes, plot wise. But it was an extraordinary group of people. Many of us are still in touch to this day. It was one of those families that, we became, that we really invested in what we were doing and what we were saying. I don't know, if I feel like the things we were discussing then are equally as relevant now, and maybe even more so. But even at that time, they were very relevant. North Korea was testing nuclear weapons while we were shooting, and there was just an air about it that was felt important. And obviously, it rang true with a lot of people. We had the unfortunate thing, they decided early on, even from my understanding in the upfronts when they picked it up, that they were going to do Lost's 4 season model of marketing and do 11 episodes and then take a 2-3 month break and start with the 12th and run through, to the end. But they didn't really let the audience know about that. And so it dropped, I think 2-3 million viewers in that hiatus, and we got blamed for it and not marketing, and they cut the show. So it was just an unfortunate set of circumstances, which led to its demise, unfortunately. And I know Netflix had, a few years after that, maybe as many as 5 or 6 years after that, wanted to produce it, and they got as far as schedules and budgets and locations and all this stuff, and CBS balked at the deal. So yeah, it was close. Now, who knows? You could certainly, I don't even know where it stands in terms of who owns what, but you could certainly make a case. My idea was that, if we went back even now 10 years ago and revived it, that we had devolved to living underground, and how we, had gotten worse, and how do we get back to where we even left the show, let alone further. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
No,
sad. I love that show.
it's nice to think about, but yeah, it is sad. Well, I'm sure you get a lot of chances to talk about this and about Scream and everything. What's a project from your career that no one ever asks you about that you wish you would get to talk about in these interviews?
Um, you know, uh, Oddly, Ride with the Devil very rarely gets discussed, and it's an Ang Lee movie, and it's a brilliant movie. Something we spent 7 months making. And it was sad, it was a sort of another thing where our original distributor was October Films while we were filming, and they got bought by USA Films at that time. And they had one release, which was the Sharon Stone, Albert Brooks film. I can't remember the name of it. And we were going to be their second, and they were really scared that Jeffrey Wright played a black Confederate soldier. And they didn't know how. The movie is really ultimately about how friendships can transcend politics, even in wartime. And I think they missed the point of it. We opened it at Toronto, and it was, in that big theater, and it was a massive success. And I think it's a beautiful film. It just kind of got overlooked, unfortunately. I mean, right in between Sense and Sensibility and Crouching Tiger, it's, Aang at his best, and he was so much fun to work with, and such a beautiful, beautiful human being. But yeah,
Well,
the one I did with Gary Oldman, Nobody's Baby. People don't talk about that much, but that was similar thing at Sundance. It did really well, but never really got seen.
so much out there, and I feel like now it's like hopefully with all well, again with streamers and everything, there's a way, but still not every some things go straight there, and nobody's so
Yeah,
it's one of
it's
the
hard to,
stuff.
it's hard to go back and go, oh, I'm going to watch Baby Reindeer now because so and so's on, and so and so's on, and so and so's on, let alone go back to films 20 years ago. But yeah, those are some that I enjoyed anyway.
Well, your mention of Baby Reindeer was a great transition to my last question, which is that we love awards here at Awards Buzz. So I like to ask everybody, what's a show or performance you've seen recently that you feel is really awards worthy?
Those are up there. I mean, I also stood across from Giancarlo, so it's hard for me not to point my fingers that way. Like, that man is brilliant. Um, yeah, Baby Reindeer certainly scared me in some regards, and actually did what I was hoping it wouldn't do, which was reinvigorate some stalkers of the past. But I think those performances are absolutely brilliant. I don't unfortunately watch a ton of TV, so I don't have a lot of, things to compare things to, but those were extraordinary performances for sure, and definitely should be noted.
Awesome. Well, it's such a pleasure talking to you. I hope that we'll get some news on Parish season two. And while we're at it, let's get the Jericho conversation going back. It's never too late for a reboot.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.